What's that, bud? The Lincoln Summer Sales event is on now with exclusive offers? Oh, so you want to feel the wind pouring through the available open panoramic vista roof on a road trip? And spend the afternoon beachside hanging out on the back of the spacious Lincoln Splitgate? Okay, I'll schedule a Lincoln test drive today, right before your vet appointment. Visit your local Lincoln retailer or learn more at Lincoln.com.
Morning decisions. How about a creamy mocha frappuccino drink? Or sweet vanilla? Smooth caramel, maybe? Or a white chocolate mocha? Whichever you choose, delicious coffee awaits. Find Starbucks Frappuccino drinks wherever you buy your groceries.
A lot of people will come to this book or will come to me and say like, hey, like I saw how you were like, comparing it to this. And my response is always, whether it's one side of the aisle or the other, I just say good.
Yeah.
Art is supposed to imitate real life, but just keep in mind, there could be someone on the other aisle that is seeing something totally different from the same concept that I am proposing.
Welcome back to the Ivory Tower Boiler Room. It's Andrew. I am so excited to let you all know that we are now in the top 40 best liberal arts podcasts list that got sent to me, and we're number 3. So thank you all for listening to the podcast. And I just really appreciate that you keep spreading the word. So please make sure you follow us on social media. Instagram is Ivory Tower Boiler Room, TikTok, Dr. Rimby, and please review us on Apple, Spotify. All of it helps. So I hope you just enjoy this episode. And as always, remember, there is an ad-free version on our Patreon. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Ivory Tower Boiler Room. It's Dr. Andrew Rimby for what I know is going to be an unusual episode. Hopefully not the last. It definitely won't be the last sci-fi episode. But actually, there's a few more episodes coming up with other authors who've done sci-fi. So I feel like this author opened the floodgates for exploring sci-fi literature, which, as I was telling him, is not a genre that I always have associated like my own interest in, but I'm starting to become more fascinated with it, especially with the advancement of AI, digital media, technology everywhere, just thinking about what it means for us to be humans in this current moment. And I know sci-fi is great for that. So Nicholas Casbarro is, well, not only an incredibly accomplished writer now, but as I was talking with him, he told me about his Doctor of Physical Therapy program, which he graduated from in 2013, his upbringing in Rhode Island, how he actually worked in the medical device field with a specialty in wound healing and burn treatment. In 2021, he joined a regenerative medicine company where he spent 5 days a week on a plane traveling the country to work with burn surgeons and victims. And while flying, he actually developed and had his inspiration for starting to write in the sci-fi genre. But as a child, he loved, and I'm sure still loves, Aldous Huxley, George Orwell, Frank Herbert, Isaac Asimov, the great sci-fi writers and dystopic writers, right? We'll get into dystopian literature, which is the genre I'm really into, that like sci-fi dystopic genre. But we're here to talk about a novel that he wrote at 36,000 feet, and he has 6 books planned in this series. And as he told me, it's a lot of people think it's Vitalerium is how you pronounce it, but they sometimes say Vitalerium or Vitalerium. I'm just going to say Vitalerium because that's how you pronounce it. So, Nicholas, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thank you for having me on, Andrew. And I'm honored to have opened the floodgates for you here a little bit.
You did. I've been consuming every sci-fi film I can get my hands on. The Matrix, Minority Report.
Solid one right there.
Yeah, that one I really loved. That was
Fantastic
good.
concept.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Matrix, I don't know. My husband loves The Matrix, but I don't know. There's something about The Matrix I just can't. You know what it is? And hopefully, I'm sure this will speak to you. I love when sci-fi represents and replicates our society. I have a hard time when you don't see the actual world of our everyday lives. Like even Alien, it took me a little while to get into because it's all just in this like spacecraft. And like I really want to see things like The Handmaid's Tale or like things where
Yeah.
chaos is kind of you see the unraveling of a society like that represents America and American politics.
Well, it's funny. I agree. I feel like if you can tether it to something that's real to people today, they're going to find a little bit of an easier time latching onto it. Um, and that was one of my goals in, I guess, creating the Vitalerium universe was trying to create a semi-modern society, but one that is multiplanetary. Just a hyper advanced civilization that is multiplanetary, but still maintains some semblance of what we're used to today. And what that allows me to do is it allows me to mirror
Mhm.
certain current events in real life and provide a little bit of commentary on them, maybe extrapolate on them a little bit and see where they go out to, maybe even in their worst ways. Um, I know you said, we talked about it a little bit before we got on camera, but I know you're a big horror fan.
Mhm.
And with everything that we have going on today, with all the uncertainty, especially around the AI stuff, I mean, there's a lot of kind of real life horror that is just kind of brimming in the background of, I feel like everyone's mind now,
Oh,
because no one knows
absolutely.
exactly where it's going to go. Um,
Yeah.
and so being able to tack onto that a little bit, I wanted to create a society where we find, even at the very least, a temporary solution to a society that coexists with artificial intelligence in a way that allows us to maintain our humanity as we know it. And
Yeah.
so what we'll see in the first book and probably the first couple of books
Mhm.
is a little bit more of a mirroring of what we're seeing as a society today, just
Yeah.
in a little bit more of a far future setting. Um, I am going to broach the AI topic a little more deeply as we get into books, probably three. I definitely
Mhm.
touch on the subject in book two. I present it at the very least,
Yeah.
and then books three, four, and five will definitely begin to dive deep.
Yeah.
I've learned that as you're creating a series that is, many books in the making, planning and prefacing things prior to the real deep dive is important for setting the scene and helping to make sure that you build the universe in a way that is almost like a step-by-step process. You're not just tossing in this wild scenario that people have to try and wrap their heads around. I can kind of slowly wade them into the water of all of the concepts that we're going to explore in the Vitalarium series.
Yeah. So like, as just growing up, like what was it about those authors I mentioned that drew you? Was it their thinking about the scientific inquiry, thinking about technological advancement, the ethics around technology? Like I think about um George Orwell and like it's just so interesting what he does in his work. And like if I'm remembering right, George Orwell's most famous work is um
1984.
1984, right? Okay.
He
So
also did Animal Farm too, which is
and
also
Animal Farm.
a classic, right? Little
Yeah, so
dive into
like
Stalinism.
yeah, what he does with like 1984, I mean, everyone now thinks about Big Brother. Like that comes from 1984. But
Right.
like surveillance systems, those who speak out, who get criminal or are seen as the villain for speaking out, like very Ray Bradbury. That's someone else I really
Oh
love.
yeah.
Like I'm a huge fan of Fahrenheit 451. And
Absolutely.
I find like though George Orwell, like what he's doing with society is really different than like Isaac Asimov and robotics or right? Like so it seems like you really enjoy a lot of different varieties of sci-fi.
I enjoy delving into all the potential ways that we could fuck it up.
Hmm. Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
and not necessarily just for, those who are not in power, but for as a species in general.
Mm.
I love Asimov because I feel like he can take a singular concept and flesh it out in a 10 to 15 page short story in ways that some authors don't even achieve in, entire books of work.
Mhm.
And show kind of a dystopian lesson or a potential pitfall for humanity with a particular type of technology or a particular outlook or a certain aspect of something. He was fantastic at that. I really, personally, I think his short stories are second to none.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
but and then you've got Orwell, who really focuses more on sort of the human flaws that can be, I guess, taken advantage of, and how malleable just the human condition can be.
Mm.
Um, I mean, you get to see that when the protagonist in 1984 is basically tortured into submission, and eventually, emerges fully loving the party and fully loving the government and completely fine with the eradication of the, you know, what was supposed to be a beautiful relationship between him and his lover in the book.
Yeah. It's
And
very Stepford Wives, but in a
yeah,
in like conforming to the fascist authoritarian regime, um, where like that feminist dystopic. I don't know if you've ever seen the original Stepford Wives film, but it's a very interesting
no, I
uh
haven't.
like take on traditional gender roles as the horror. And then it got popularized by Nicole Kidman in
Okay,
the newer version, but um yeah, I find those types of texts really interesting, like what you're saying, where, you know, that fear of your authenticity or individuality being taken away, specifically like from an American context. I feel like we're in a moment right now where so many, right? And I think AI is that boogie man of
Mm,
sorts, where like a lot of humanists, like myself included, are just like really concerned about, well, what does that mean for original work? Or, writers are concerned about, well, what does that mean for literature and ideas?
sure.
Like, that whole technocrats keep like repeating that idea of like optimization, like, oh, we're going to optimize results. Like, I know Sam Altman, he keeps saying that with OpenAI's concept. And it's like, well, what does optimizing results look like
Sure.
in the arts? Like, or what does that even mean for the workers in America?
Well, I think there needs to be a space left for humans to be able to find purpose in their
Hmm.
life, because a life without purpose is one of, I mean, you end up a lost soul, which, funny enough, is kind of where you find the protagonist in this book. The losses that he goes through kind of
Yeah.
leave him a wandering. He's floating through life aimlessly, and you see
Yeah.
the results of that. He's not living a fulfilling life. He's not certainly not living a necessarily moral life when you first meet him as an adult. Um, you see a little bit of a degradation of the standard of living, the just the moral compass in a sense. luckily, I think I found a way to really kind of show that despite it being on the back burner, there is still some good kind of locked up in this protagonist that you end up following. His name's Roman Matthews.
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna
And
ask, how did that idea come to you for his name? I don't know. I feel like Roman Matthews has such like a heroic, almost like
I,
biblical feel to it, actually.
well, funny enough, I mean, I wanted to include a lot of different aspects to this because I have, like I said, 7 books planned. If I have that kind of breadth to be able to expand on this universe and expand on the human condition within it
Mm.
and certain philosophical, I guess, points that I wanted to explore. Um, I really wanted to make sure that I was taking into account almost like all aspects of life.
Mm.
And so you'll see like it's not you're not just going to get like thriller or action from this, it's not your kind of run of the mill sci-fi. You're going to get moments of humor, you're going to get some love interest, you're going to get some romance. Um, there are moments where you do get to really see some philosophical exploration, mostly through conversation between characters. I had to create a religion within the book. What does the predominant religion look like 700 years in the future in a multi-planetary civilization? And I had to really put some thought into that to try and, kind of define that a little bit. And what it allowed me was an outlet to really discuss some of that philosophy.
Mm.
Um, the and it's led me down. I can't tell you how many fucking rabbit holes
Yeah.
because you explore, you know, uh, the kind of the makeup of the economy when you're working on the political intrigue. You're working on philosophy and religion when you're trying to work on creating what I call in the book the sacred order of equilibrium, which
Mm.
is the predominant religion in the future. Um, you I'm researching things like um, what is it? I'm researching things like hand-to-hand combat to make sure that I'm writing the scenes correctly.
Mm.
I'm researching military terminology so that I can write effectively certain scenes where you're, watching the government, which is, basically an aspiring totalitarian regime, kind of an authoritarian budding on totalitarian, um, kind of advance, oftentimes with violence. And you end up going down a lot of rabbit holes. And I chose the name Roman Matthews for the character because Roman, I'm fascinated by the fall of the Roman Empire. And one of the major concepts of this book actually ties into the philosophical concept behind that religion that I created, which is the symbol for it is the great swinging pendulum.
Mm.
How the universe always corrects itself only to overcorrect and then to recorrect and only to overcorrect, always achieving equilibrium, basically not a straight line. And so that the fall of the Roman Empire history is one of my, big history and mythology, I should say. Two of my big inspirations in terms of, where I did a lot of research to try and derive meaning
Mm.
from for the concepts of the book. Um, so Roman felt like a good first name for the character, and then Matthew. Not only is it my brother's name, who I love dearly, great dude,
Mm.
um, but the biblical name Matthew actually means gift from God.
Mm.
And over the course of this 7 book series, you're basically going to be watching the emergence of a future mythological hero in real time.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna. I feel is like Roman Matthews has this Odysseus, Beowulf, um, even Caesar, like just that mythical epic hero. So like that is part of your journey in this world building that you're doing throughout your entire series, is like to really create this concrete heroic figure of mythical proportions. Why does anything exist? Why is there something rather than nothing? I think that's a question we all, as curious people, have asked ourselves. And let me tell you, Professor Stephen A. Simon's new book is so thought-provoking that I can't wait for you all to pick it up. He provides his experience as a professor of political science and philosophy to explore that question with such a variety of perspectives from science, religion, philosophy, and even mathematics. He helps us understand what could possibly explain the most fundamental fact of all, that anything exists. So you can get this from broadviewpress.com. The floodgates have opened with science fiction as a genre in my life because I owe this to my husband and I'm going to give him credit. He has really gotten me to think more about sci-fi, film, and literature. I have to say, Minority Report, absolutely amazing. And Alien, I mean, who doesn't love that alien coming out of that human body in the first film? So, Professor Jason Haslam's new anthology provides a lot of exploration with all different short fiction, so many sci-fi authors, over 200 years, including sci-fi that explores indigenous futurism, feminist science fiction, Afrofuturism. Again, you can get this on broadviewpress.com. And last but not least, my upcoming episode with Professor Matthew James Wachinsky explores his book, which is Original Inquiry, a guide to research for undergraduates, a great toolkit for all faculty out there who are just trying to find a book that helps their students understand how to collect research sources and then, right, the hardest part, build and organize their essay with all of these sources and to make a cohesive argument. I can't recommend Original Inquiry highly enough. So again, all three books can be found on broadviewpress.com. Use the promo code Ivory Tower for 20% off.
Running a small business means I wear lots of hats. When I put on my hiring hat, I can count on LinkedIn Hiring Pro to make it easy. LinkedIn Hiring Pro helps manage my hiring workflow, puts my job post in front of a unique network of professionals, and matches me with the best candidates for my business. I can also share my job with my network. No other job site lets me do that. No wonder most small businesses say they'd use LinkedIn Hiring Pro again. Hire right the first time. Post your job for free on LinkedIn today at linkedin.com/quality.
This episode is brought to you by Accenture. When your advertising operations fall out of sync, everything else follows. Spotify and Accenture are working together to reinvent the rhythm of ad sales, using automation, analytics, and smarter workflows to simplify campaign delivery and access better data across the business. The result? Less time spent on operations, more time connecting brands with the moments and fandoms that matter most. Learn more at accenture.com/Spotify.
Are you a fan of classic Hollywood movies?
Are you a fan of queer cinema?
Then do we have the podcast for you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Christian Garcia.
And I'm Luke Del Mar.
And we are your hosts of That Old Gay Classic Cinema, where we take a look at some of the greatest films of all time and analyze them through a queer theoretical lens.
Let's be honest. LGBTQIA+ people have been a part of Hollywood since its inception, and this podcast celebrates those artists and entertainers of yesteryear while also taking a closer look at the queer-coded characters and stories in classic Hollywood films long before queer representation entered the mainstream.
So follow us down the road of classic cinema as we give you a guide to some of the films that touched our hearts, brains, and even gave us courage to be ourselves.
You can listen to That Old Gay Classic Cinema wherever you get your podcasts, and be sure to follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok.
All right, listeners, we're ready for our close-up.
100% heroic and extremely imperfect. I mean, you part of I'd say the entire first book, you're basically looking at his rediscovery of purpose under this aspiring totalitarian regime. And you're seeing him kind of change subtly, and you're going to see him continue to evolve throughout the books that, emerge in the series. Um, the first book basically takes place over the course of like, 3, 4 weeks.
Mm.
And so it's not going to be that perfect. He's not going to have a complete 180-degree turnaround in that time period. I mean, let's be honest. He's, essentially a 29-year-old or 29 orbit
Mm.
old, because it's not quite the same as the Earth standard year on the planet that it takes place on. Um, he's 29 years old, and 29 years of hardship and loss and living a life essentially as a mercenary. I mean, he's got a talent for violence, and he is rough around the edges. He's morally gray at best when you first meet him. Um, but you're going to start to see small changes in him throughout that book, and then those are going to gradually compound as more and more responsibility is thrust upon him based on the circumstances that he comes into contact with.
Mm. Well, it's so interesting you bring up your fascination with the Roman Empire because do you remember when on social media there was like going around how straight men, well, I'm assuming you're straight,
I,
but
I, I got a wife.
okay. Well, yeah, so I
It's
found
too
it.
it's too it's too bad you're married. She's got a brother.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, my husband would not would not like that. But I found it interesting that so many straight men like are just like fascinated with the Roman Empire. Like apparently um they think about the Roman Empire all the time. And I was like just wondering, is it just as simple as being interested in a time when like the rise and the fall of just like a great civilization that goes through so much turmoil. You think of these emperors in Rome and you have one like fiddling as Rome's burning, right? I think that's Nero. You
Yeah.
have like one who wants like the horse or an animal to be in the Senate. And you have Caesar and all of the political intrigue that happens with him. But it's like they're all really fallible emperors. Like there really is a real lack of speaking for the people during the Roman Empire. Or they try to speak
Well,
for the people, but just like our political system, uh, it's a push and a pull back and forth. Like, is that what gravitates you towards the Roman Empire? Is this
I don't know.
relatability? Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like it's one of the empires that in this country we certainly tend to focus on in terms of what we're taught as far as the history of the world.
Mm,
Um, I think it's a good lesson. I think there's a lot that occurred in the era of the ruling Roman Empire that can be learned from, as
mm,
far as once again, the pitfalls of the way they ran things, the way that their government evolved and kind of changed over the years. And yeah, I mean, I find gems of inspiration everywhere, all throughout different periods of history. Um, I don't think it's specifically a Roman Empire thing. I think the Roman Empire thing made for a very good meme because it's
yeah.
something
Yeah.
it's something that most people could relate to because no matter where you went to school in this country, at some point you probably learned a little bit about the Roman Empire. Um, and then as far as the straight men's focus on it, I don't know. I don't know if I could speak to that much. Maybe it's because maybe that I think that just happens when you have kids in general, whether you're straight or not, because then you start thinking about um, the future, not just for yourself, but for the next generation, right?
Yeah.
That's what's the quote? I can't remember if it was Plato or if it was one of his students or predecessors. It was, society flourishes when men plant trees, the shade of which they'll never live to
Mm,
enjoy.
mm,
And I definitely feel like in today's world, it's a concept we've kind of grown apart from, which is discouraging for sure, maybe a little worrisome, and certainly that would drive a lot of people to learn about what mistakes were made along the way to maybe try and have a hand in preventing them. Now, saying that that's my goal here with this, but I my goal here with the book was to all of the great sci-fi authors that I've really loved, like Asimov and
Hmm.
Frank Herbert and all of these guys, they've found a way to almost forecast elements of the future in a way that were in some ways spot on. Like
Yeah.
Orwell, I mean, the 1984 stuff, I feel more relevant today now than ever, especially with the way that the media is used. I think it's particularly relevant.
Mm.
So my my focus was not to be partisan either way. It was to explore the human condition and explore what happens when these kind of blind ambitions are followed and what tactics could be used to try and implement them, even if they were against the will of the people.
Well, and that's where I find sci-fi is so interesting because like what I really appreciate about it, like, and you've, you know, gotten me to reflect on this a lot to prepare for this conversation is the philosophical questions that it raises and that a lot of sci-fi, it's asking like really big moral or ethical questions. And,
Sure.
like what you're focused on, what 1984 does, what even Interstellar, which is a film I have to watch. But
Oh, come on. You're going to love
I
it.
know that's the one like I'm up
That's a
to next.
masterpiece. That is, I'll
And
tell you right now, that is an absolute masterpiece. You're going to love it.
I'm excited, yes. But even, like what Dune does, um, I think that what I'm always so fascinated with is like how you create this world, trying to decide whether or not you're going to set your fictional space in like the current moment and turn it on its head. Um, that would be like The Handmaid's Tale, which is right more of that dystopian present. Or if you're gonna like just go further into the future and look at what society would be like, kind of the Back to the Future part two, um, which I've always found interesting when they like pop in that like microwavable food and then it like comes back out. I don't know if
Yeah,
you remember that scene.
of course.
Yes.
There's a lot of brilliance and
Yeah.
lovely convenience to be found in the future.
Yeah, the
Um,
hoverboard. But you set us in 2701, which, was that like why for you did you want to set it so far in the future?
I wanted to give time for humanity to become a species that spans 7 different planets. And what you're
Mm.
going to see is the evolution of the societies on those planets is dependent upon the amount of time that society has had time to take root and evolve on that planet.
Mm.
And one of the things that you're going to see and why you're going to see certain planets, mirror today is because I call it I've come up with a name for it. I call it the Firefly effect. Are you familiar with it's kind of a cult following type of show. It had a movie called Serenity that followed it. It was called Firefly. It ran for one season. It became immensely popular after it was canceled. They made a movie, and now they're actually bringing it back for an animated series
Oh, okay.
with the same cast.
No, but I
And
don't know it. No. Yeah, please
it's
reveal. Yeah, what
it's
is the
fantastic,
Firefly
but
effect?
it basically covered the concept that, all right, if how long did it take to basically settle and colonize the West? If we're looking at space as like the final frontier and looking at it as the Wild West, all of the top technology and all of the, you know, kind of, I guess the advancements of civilization aren't going to make it out to the very edges immediately. It's going to take some time for that society to take root and build, for us to be able to transfer resources there, for us to be able to continue to build on where we expand from. And so you are going to see almost like a little bit of a stunting, so to speak, in terms of what's available based on how long the planet has been colonized by humans and what their focuses were and what the resources were that were available to them on that planet and how those shape society on that planet. And so, yeah, I feel like it's not so cut and dry. Like the future is just robots and everything is going to be robots. You know, I'm a big proponent of the concept that consciousness is far more complicated than we truly understand. And this idea of achieving this, you know, conscious, sentient, autonomous intelligence is maybe not so cut and dry. Maybe it could be the tool that we utilize to expand into the cosmos and maintain our relatively modern human lifestyle. And that's my personal thought behind it. Now, I know that there are definitely some challenges to overcome and to make sure that we're not, you know, shooting ourselves in the foot. But I think it's a little less cut and dry than it's made out to be. And the reason is because how many end of the world events have we already lived through? You know, Y2K, 2012. What was the last one? Who even fucking remembers? You know,
pandemic.
There you go. That's a big spark of inspiration there in certain parts of what you're going to see derived from the book. But but I feel like the concept of the end of civilization has always been used as fuel to either drive humanity in a certain direction or take advantage of humanity in a certain method or in a certain way. And so what I hope people derive from this book is no matter what political lens you go into reading this book in, you know, everyone's got their own biases. I'm not trying to drive people in one direction or another. People are adults that can make their own fucking decisions. But acknowledge your own biases through the lens of, you know, whatever lens it is that you're looking at, and look at the motivations, look at the human condition, look at the why. Never stop asking questions. Ask more questions. I can't tell you that my entire philosophy behind the world building is built on asking questions. Well, if this planet has this as its main resource, what is that planet going to look like as it continues to evolve? What language are they going to speak based on, you know, what faction kind of broke off from Mother Earth and ended up colonizing that planet? You know, how does that kind of affect society? We're going to dive into basically all different types of governments, how all different forms of governments can be used to take advantage of. I mean, take advantage of the people. I mean, you got to look at it like this. Now, no matter what side of the aisle, you know, politicians, they are salesmen of the highest order, essentially. And that's coming from someone who's been in sales for more than a decade. And I'm not half bad at it either. but
Yeah.
but recognize the difference between the issue, the sales pitch, and the motivation. And if you can do that, you can make sound decisions moving forward in this society. If I can be even a drop in the bucket of sanity, then I've accomplished some goal.
Yeah. Do you think there's a lot of pressure with an audience? Do you think that it's hard when an audience or a reader um like doesn't know where on the political spectrum, like if a book is speaking to a specific political party? Like, do you think that we're in a time in our society where a lot of people like want to know exactly what a
Of
book or
course,
what a piece of artwork, a film is, what they're supposed to get out of it instead of
of
just
course.
like coming to their own understanding? Looking for summer reads? The Gay and Lesbian Review, a bi-monthly magazine that features arts and culture conversations about the LGBT community, has you covered. The July and August issue is all about summer getaways and artists. So, for example, there are articles about David Hockney. There's an article about the sculpture in Central Park that some of you, if you've seen Angels in America, definitely recognize, by Emma Stebbins. So I can't wait for you all to get your hands on this issue. As always, there are TV reviews, film reviews, book reviews, theater reviews. So if you just don't know where to begin with LGBTQ literature, this is a great magazine to inspire you to add more books to your to be read pile. I love the Gay and Lesbian Review, and I'm so happy because I have a promo code for you. Go to glreview.org and get the print subscription or the digital subscription and put in ITBR choice for a free issue of the magazine.
Get business done with the new American Express Graphite Business Cash Unlimited card. With unlimited 2% cash back on all eligible purchases, unlimited 5% cash back on flights and prepaid hotels booked through American Express Travel Online, and a flexible spending capacity that can grow with your business, you'll have the confidence to keep building. Apply today and earn a welcome offer of $1,500 cash back after you spend $50,000 in qualifying purchases on your new card within the first 6 months of card membership. Terms apply. Learn more at go.amex/graphite.
Pace Checkout is offered by your banks and credit unions. So when you shop online at participating merchants, your cards appear in one place, ready to use and kept up to date. And the best part, your actual card number isn't shared when you check out, because boundaries are healthy, like no work emails after 6. One small step for boundaries, one big leap for checkout. Pace, it checks out. Activation required. See pace.com to learn more. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome to Severed, a podcast week dropping new episodes every Monday. Severed True Crime and Severed Paranormal episodes deep dive into murder, mysteries, and the otherworldly in a concise format. A 7-minute story to frame the case with thoughtful analysis and our usual banter.
We sometimes find the lighter side of darker cases. We offer 3 spin-off shows, Severed Strange Stories, Severed Haunted You, and Severed Serial Killers, that highlight the unusual to lighthearted topics from the digital dumpsters of true crime, haunted universities, and the minds of madness like Ted Bundy and Jeffrey Dahmer.
We are your co-hosts. I'm Harry Chambers.
And I'm Drew Hudson. Listen on all major podcast platforms, including Rogue Media Network and Radio Garden State. Follow us on Instagram at severed_podcast.
And all that does is show you just how divided we've become. And that's, to the detriment of understanding. Understanding that no matter what side of the aisle, if you're just an everyday person, if you're my neighbor down the street, I imagine you want pretty much the same things that I want. as long
Hmm.
as you're a halfway decent person, you want, a good life for yourself, for your family. You want opportunity. You want um, maybe a support net should things go wrong. Um, because, if you're paying for it, you hope that the resources are allocated to you, right? And that is definitely something that a lot of people will come to this book or will come to me and say like, hey, like I saw how you were like, comparing it to this. And my response is always, whether it's one side of the aisle or the other, I just say good.
Yeah.
Art is supposed to imitate real life. But
Yeah.
just keep in mind, there could be someone on the other aisle that is seeing something totally different from the same concept that I am proposing. And that's not always an easy thing to delineate nowadays because I feel like, with the evolution of social media and other types of just certainly classic media is you fit into this bucket, you like this stuff, you don't like this stuff. That's that. We're going to show all the stuff you hate about that bucket. And that bucket's not that much different from you.
Yeah, it's the
And
way algorithms have propelled a type of tribalism,
yeah,
like being fed to us to like not see the in-between spaces. Like I think that it's important, like you're saying, Nicholas, to have a text like yours that like you're asking the reader, and just like all of the inspiration that you've gotten from authors, to really, we have to come to our own takeaway from what your text is providing. It's not like you're giving us one path that it's a one-to-one. Like, well, if you read my book, you'll understand, it's going to reflect back to you everything that you believe, like without challenging
right.
our own assumptions. And I think that's what sci-fi is so good at, is having us reflect on what we believe, questioning it, you know, not just consuming things that make us comfortable.
Sure.
Yeah.
You got to get comfortable being uncomfortable. That's how you grow as a person, right?
Hmm.
You get a better if understanding is not the goal of your endeavors in, I mean, just about any aspect of life. I mean, you evaluate. I mean, what are you working toward?
Yeah.
I mean, you would just be hardening yourself into a lack of understanding, if that. Because understanding, no matter how minuscule, you follow that out. Let's say, for instance, that the same thing that happened on planet Diorum happens here.
Mm.
And essentially, what I don't write about in the book and a little bit of the lore that kind of happens behind the scenes is, you know, the two sides are driven so far apart that there is no reasonable explanation for a path forward other than for one side to win. And typically, when that happens on a political scale, that leads to violence. And once that happens, no one wins. Because from there, what's to say that some other difference down the line, even with the folks who kind of survive or adapt or kind of make it to the next stage of whatever that civilization looks like, what's to say there aren't smaller differences that can be used to divide you from there? It just becomes more and more, well,
Well, no, I know what you're
not
saying. It's
good.
it's that type of like um divide and conquer strategy that even if you only surround yourself with people who think like you, eventually that group is going to find ways to have a schism. Like, it's important to be challenged and not be surrounded by groupthink, right? And I mean, it's why cult leaders like Jim Jones
Hmm.
like thinks he's
Fascinating.
creating a utopia, but then eventually it becomes an egomaniacal mission that he starts to become paranoid. He like creates fracturing within his community, and then he thinks everyone is out to get him, and then he wants everyone around him to end their lives and follow him
Hmm.
into death, right? It becomes a death call, and I think we see a lot of real life experiences where um I guess even what it means to, you know, not be challenged. To not be challenged means you stop having freedom of thought and expression, which I don't think is a healthy society when everyone, has to try to fit into the same thinking and ideology. Um, which is why I think it's so important that we have works like yours, Nick, because we need to have more people challenge, our thinking about, what technology's purpose is, what colonization even, right? Like I wanted to get into that idea that you bring up about, your book is so interested in like this discovery, right? So it's been 6 centuries that Vitalerium has been around,
Correct.
right? Okay. So, right, a precious resource like this, just like how much this multiplanetary colonialism, how it's been spread, I think it's so fascinating because that idea of like colonization brings both progress, but also on the flip side, it can also bring oppression of like the indigenous communities, right? Like in your case, how did you think about like those ethical issues of even what the process of colonization, what that brings to the forefront?
Well, in the books, the thankfully so far with the current planets and as far as how they're colonized, the discovery of life has certainly been, present, but the discovery of intelligent life to the level of, you know, our abilities in terms of, we are essentially the dominant species on planet Earth, correct? We're
Mhm.
able to manipulate our environment unlike any other species known to man.
Mhm.
Um, we haven't really found any of those species that would rival us yet in that sense. However, when we colonize planet Diorum, what we find are the remnants of a civilization that did come before us on that planet. And all that's left behind are the ruins. So you see, Roman actually kind of his specialty is he's kind of a survivalist. He is able to he knows enough about the flora and fauna of Diorum and the Diorum kind of unforgiving Diorum landscapes to be able to survive outside of the walls of Kyrus, which is the basically houses 99.99999% of the population on the planet. So his knowledge of everything outside of that is what allows him to run a lot of missions and do these odd jobs for local gangs and, the kind of the random, I guess, job holder to make ends meet. And you'll see him, finding artifacts, uh, which is technically illegal in that time, for certain buyers from this past civilization, which seems to have disappeared. Which you'll get a little bit more of is a little bit of a deeper dive into an understanding of that past civilization, which they call the glyph. Um, you'll get to see a little bit more of what they've left behind and why.
Yeah.
And I found that to be an interesting concept because it is such to me, even on our planet, it is such an interesting concept how some of the norms of archaeology and other things are being challenged today. Um, as far as, just the things like the pyramids. I don't know if you're familiar with that Italian scientist who utilized the satellite LiDAR technology to look beneath the Great Pyramids and found these massive structures beneath them that extend, hundreds of meters into the ground below them.
Mm.
It's fascinating, fascinating types of stuff. I find that to be incredibly interesting, to know the origins of, those that came before us. So it was definitely something that I wanted to include in this particular book, and I think I found a pretty interesting way to do so.
Yeah.
I'm not going
Or
to give it away.
like the
No, yeah.
files released by, like, I have to ask you, what do you think about uh more and more coming out about extraterrestrial life? I know there's a lot of people who believe that the aliens are real.
Let me put it like this. I think, given what we know about the universe and given the vastness of the universe, I think it would be, hmm, what's the word I'm looking for? It would be pretty cocky of us to believe that we are the only intelligent life that is manipulating our environment at this level.
Hmm.
I think it would be even more um, ridiculous to assume that we are the very top of the food chain and that other civilizations maybe haven't discovered technologies or advanced further beyond us, especially given what we know about the incipience of the universe and the fact that there are Goldilocks planets out there, that maybe a few of those Goldilocks planets have been able to sustain or support advanced life for longer than we have, given them a longer runway to be able to explore these types of things. Um, However, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely convinced. And being the skeptic that I am, like I said, if there's one thing you can pull from this, it's to continue to ask questions.
Yes.
Um, what's the time period that we're in right now? What is the new war that we've just started? What are the things that we're trying to potentially distract from? What is it, the Epstein files and this and that and all these different damning types of things, you know, that's going on. And suddenly now is the time when we're going to release all of this information. Um, I'm not saying that I know definitively because I don't. I don't have the type of expertise to be able to dive into that, the different files that are released, the different um, videotaped evidence, to be able to say whether or not one way or another this is definitely true, this is definitely bullshit. I don't know. Um, but I think it would be a little bit irresponsible of us to believe that we are the only intelligent life in the universe.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I also think, as you were talking about, to me, like, there is this interesting intersection you have here with sci-fi and horror, and like a sci-fi horror film that I absolutely am so scared by is Alien.
Oh,
Uh,
all right.
and
Go. Now we're going deep.
yeah, and I mean, I love the horror of Alien. I think also it's interesting because the life that they find on another planet, they're trying to colonize, but yet, they can't like keep the aliens literally in their place. Like they can't colonize them or they can't manipulate them. And like the aliens come and like get inside of them, and right, I mean, you have that really gory scene in the first film where the alien comes out of the person. But like in your own thinking, in your novel, um, and eventual, future books, how do you think about this like idea of sci-fi and horror? Like I know you were telling me something about this idea of cosmic horror.
Yes. So first off, I love Alien, and I love Alien for a number of reasons because it focuses on kind of a different set of rules that contribute to a species being the quote unquote dominant species, right? Whereas we kind of focus on the intelligence aspect, they really focus on specifically the survival aspect. I mean, if you dive into some of the lore behind the alien creature, I mean, it literally is able to launch itself into the void of space and protect itself for thousands and thousands of years, basically go into a state of stasis where it can survive and then colonize other planets. That even goes back to, are you familiar with a little movie called Starship Troopers?
If you're a QuickBooks customer looking to grow without the growing pains, you need the Intuit ERP, the AI native ERP that upgrades right from QuickBooks. Learn more at intuit.com/ERP.
This episode is brought to you by Adobe Firefly, the all-in-one creative studio with AI-powered image and video generation. Built for today's creative process, Firefly helps you generate, edit, and experiment fast. Because the asks aren't getting smaller, and the timelines? Woo, yeah, still tight. With all the best creative AI models in one place, Firefly brings your ideas to life. Learn more at adobe.com/firefly.
Yes, yeah.
Hell yeah. One of my favorites of all time. People forget that that's basically like it's kind of a satire on a fascist society. In terms of like directing the war efforts towards killing the bug. We just have to kill the bug. But in one of the scenes when they're dissecting one of these creatures, an interesting kind of dialogue occurs where the professor there is saying, we like to think of ourselves as the dominant life force in the universe, but this species is able to basically hurl its spores into space and colonize new planets from afar, completely separate from, the intelligence that we kind of hold as the highest trait. Almost like once again, it's kind of an egocentric thing. I love Alien for that. I love Starship Troopers for that. I love that for a number of reasons. But yeah, no, I kind of went on a tangent.
No, I
Question
think
again?
no. I think, even when I had on, which if you haven't heard his episode, I think you would find it fascinating, which is um his name's Harrison Byers Newberry, and he like has written nonfiction about like getting downloads from the universe, so to speak, and like how we're entering into like what are some are saying we're going into like a 5D realm. I don't know if you've heard these theories. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, like we're in a type of like new consciousness happening. And I don't know, I find it interesting what he says. I think there's definitely like I believe in higher consciousness. Um, but yeah, I'm still like the jury's still out for me about what it means to like live in like what it means if we were in like a 5D world. Like I can't grasp that. I think it's interesting these theories. I'm skeptical about some of these ideas, but I find his thinking interesting.
And I love the exercise of going through things like that and thinking about I mean, that's part of why I do this, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's where my this is the type of shit that keeps me up at night. But the 5D consciousness thing, I see what they're getting at, but I think once again, there's so little understood about the concept, the source, the design of consciousness that there's so much left to be desired by conventional and modern explanations for it. And while I do understand, I think that the if AI goes in a proper direction and isn't used to basically just guide civilization in one particular path or in one particular way, but rather is used as a method of expanding understanding and expanding knowledge, that's certainly something I could get behind and something I would get behind. I still, there's something, and I don't know what it is. Part of it is visceral. It's this visceral feeling that it's not AI consciousness, so to speak, whether it is true consciousness or whether it is just perfect at imitating it, it just does not seem to be on the same plane as us. Aldous Huxley, he didn't just write, A Brave New World. He wrote some really interesting stuff about the use of psychedelics and the doorway to consciousness, or the door opening the doors of. I forget the name of the goddamn book. It's on the shelf somewhere, or this one over here. I got a bunch of shelves.
Yeah.
But it's a short read, but it is very, very just, it'll get your gears turning. I feel like there's something more to the concept of consciousness that I don't know whether or not AI is able to access on the same level that we are as biological individuals. And that's not to say that it couldn't, and that's not to say that it doesn't. Something tells me there's just something that we don't quite understand about consciousness yet, that's still yet to be uncovered. But again, I won't pretend to be a physicist. I do try and do my research. I watch physicist lectures. I read new articles. I dive in deep on this stuff. COVID. Oh yeah.
Yeah, and there's some really, really amazing nonfiction books that are coming out in the science fields, like with public scholars. Neil deGrasse Tyson, of course, is a public intellect, but there's like even a lot right now about particle physics, and I remember like seeing there's a lot of books about mental health and media. I mean, a lot of that is about social media. Yeah, questioning AI's ethics and the morals, and yeah,
Sure.
can we be in charge, or maybe not in charge, but can we guide, like you said, AI? I think it's all like I was going to ask you. So you also are a consumer of a lot of nonfiction, like in your in your creative process, to understand the different scientific disciplines.
100%. And I think all of them tend to lead down the path of what is the source of all of this? What is the nature of the universe? What is the reason for existence? Why are we, period? What are we here for? All of that type of stuff. And when you get into the cosmic horror element of the story, which that's where we were. Now I remember.
Yeah.
It's definitely going to dive a little bit more into the philosophical realm of that, although in just a very interesting way, I think. I think I found a good way of presenting maybe some discovery into some of that.
Yeah. Well, and that nicely tease the audience up for my next episode that's coming out after yours is with an author who wrote a book called Why Does Anything Exist? So
There we go.
very existential, philosophical question. No, I'm, you know, like you, I love any kind of just thinking around philosophical inquiries about existence, about like why people do the things they do. I mean, human activity is fascinating. And it's what makes me just love like what you set up here for us. You know, to even just think about how humanity could have like space exploration where there's multiple colonies that exist throughout like this multiplanetary system. And it's not out of the realm of possibility. I mean, you know, space exploration is reaching like a level where it looks like we might be getting to maybe a future in the near future where people might try to live on other planets, or because of the existence of what our life will look like on Earth, depending on, you know, if climate can be uh, certain climate disasters can be avoided. And if they can't, then that future looks like it might have to, out of necessity, happen, you know, depending on if everyone isn't living in bunkers, which is another theory. Yeah.
Yeah, I think no matter what, I think the answer to our long-term survival and flourishing, which is kind of the concept that I start the book off with, it's in the stars. It is how do we, I guess, how do we escape the confines of the finite resources of a single planetary existence? And, in the book, I describe Vitalerium. Vitalerium is the novel exotic material that allows for the type of travel that eventually leads to the golden age of exploration, space exploration. But, how, even now today, there's a physicist named Harold White who's talking about the concept of negative vacuum energy density as being that exotic material, or the way to create that exotic material or that exotic phenomenon that Miguel Alcubierre discussed in his paper in the 90s. Because he's the one who came up with the concept for the warp drive, basically saying that, you know, yes, based on general relativity, the kind of universal speed limit is the speed of light, and we can't travel that speed because X, Y, Z. Well, there's a little bit of a workaround for that based on what he said, where if you have the energy and the power to be able to condense space in front of you and elongate it behind you, essentially traveling through almost like a wormhole, or kind of creating a warp bubble around yourself where gravity does not interact with you in the same way, where you're able to kind of bend the laws of physics a bit, you could far exceed the speed of light, and suddenly the cosmos would be open to us. And so now, mind you, based on what he's talking about, he's saying that to be able to gather the resources to create such a thing would be, far beyond our current capacity, but potentially possible.
Yeah.
And so that's the type of stuff I love. That's
Yeah,
the
I
type of
love
stuff
it.
I
I think
love.
though I'm gonna stay in my nice, grounded existence where I am right now. I'll let others, like even space travel. I I feel like there's a lot of uncertainty, and I'm a risk person, but I'm not a risk person when it comes to space travel.
Well, think about this. I mean, when take it down a level, when people were crossing the ocean in wooden ships with sails, just packing enough food and hoping that they had enough to get to wherever they were going, you know, kind of a similar concept. Um, just kind of thrusting out into the great unknown and hoping that you make it to your destination, despite whatever perils may be ahead. I mean, there have always been people kind of willing to brave those storms.
That is
And
true. That is
I
true.
feel I feel like it's in kind, I'll say. It's
I will say the horror though for me is being trapped in a claustrophobic spaceship. That does not seem fun
yeah, that
or
doesn't sound like
enjoyable.
fun.
If it was like a cruise ship setup, I think I'd be okay if that was the spacecraft.
All right, so we just got to get some amenities. We
Yeah,
got
we
we
need
got to get a little
amenities.
bit of space. We need some common areas, and then you're on board.
Yeah, then I might be on board.
All right,
Yes.
then you're
If
jumping
there's
on
like
my
a
spaceship.
spa, a gym, shows, movie theater, yeah. Now we're talking.
Oh
But
yeah,
the way that it exists right now, not exactly,
yeah.
something that I'm eager to sign up for. But, I also don't think I'm the one who's going to be joining right away to do that exploration. But we can all imaginatively, travel the planets in your new book, in your series. So, can you let everyone know out there, Nicholas, how can they get their hands on Vitalerium, follow you on social media, keep up to date with everything going on in your universe here?
Yeah, of course. So the easiest way to get it is on Amazon. If you like audiobooks, the audiobook is a production. I've got a real voice actor who reads it. He adds music, sound effects, voice modulation in
Awesome.
post-production. It's fantastic. It's like you're listening to a movie. That's on Amazon and Audible. What are you doing with those extra credits anyway? Uh,
Yeah.
if you want some of the limited edition stuff, I have limited edition releases of the book and the comic books because I've begun to kind of branch off into the comic book space. I've created some adaptations around the text to give people a visual representation of the world that I've created. That's all on the website. That's vitaleriumseries.com. And if you want to follow me, it's at Vitalerium on X or at Vitalerium Series on basically everything else.
Okay. Well, Nicholas, this was such an enjoyable exploration with you. I feel like you've added more to my list that I now need to like watch or consume. But like as I told Nicholas, not the last sci-fi conversation. If anything, you have opened the doorway now for me to continue exploring and, challenging myself, which I feel like sometimes it's so important to not just read what you're comfortable in or not just consume what you're comfortable in, to like push yourself. So I appreciate you, Nicholas, for, getting me to open the floodgates of sci-fi here.
Well, I appreciate you taking the leap, Andrew, man.
Yeah.
This was fun. We'll have to do it again. I've got book two
Yes.
coming out in 2026 this year.
Oh,
So,
good, good. Yeah, you'll have to come back on and we'll,
yeah.
continue seeing where all of this technology is heading here.
Hey,
Uh,
let's talk. Maybe we'll be talking entirely different by the time that comes around, with the
that's
speed
true.
with which things are moving today. So,
That's
yeah.
true. You never know. You never know. Well, everyone out there, please get your hands on Vitalarium or listen to the amazing production that's on Audible. And I can attest to how many Audible credits you get, and sometimes you don't know what to order if you are a member. So, yes, great strategy there from Nicholas. Okay. Thank you so much, Nicholas. This was really fun.
Appreciate it. Thanks again.